of 2022. Boy, and here are my NBA game predictions for January 14th of 2022. Tonight there is 9 games, and I will be going over the spreads and over-unders for all the games tonight. I got these spreads from FanDuel, and I got my over-unders from my thoughts on the games. For the Phoenix Suns at the Indiana Pacers, I'll be going Phoenix minus 5.5. I feel like this will be an overall fairly close game through the first 3 quarters, but the Suns, they always turn on in the fourth quarter. If it's a close game, they turn on the fourth quarter. Their defense amps up, their offense turns on, and they're kind of unbeatable in the fourth quarter. They kind of extend that lead. It's like, say it was a 2-point lead going to the third quarter, it usually will expand up to 8. So that's why I would bet on a 5.5 spread. If they're off to a hot start in the first half and they have that 10-plus point lead, they'll likely hold a 10-plus point lead for the rest of the game. So I'd bet on the Suns winning, and I'd feel pretty safe with that 5.5 spread too. I will be going under 224.5, as I think the Suns defense should hold down the Pacers. And the Suns, I really don't expect them to score like a greater amount than 115, as they do play a slower pace of basketball. So for a high-scoring game, I'd likely bet against that, hence the under 224.5. And then for the Pacers, I don't expect a whole lot of them. I mean, they'll compete, but I think the Suns are just overall better. For the Magic at Charlotte, I'll be going with Charlotte minus 10.5. I will say that Charlotte, they should be able to dump a lot of points onto the Magic, as Charlotte's a high-power offense. They just shoot, and they do make a lot of shots. They also give up a lot of points too, but I think their defense has been playing better of late, as I've been seeing their final scores, and it's not as high scoring as it was, but they can still put up a lot of points. And the Magic, I don't know who's going to slow down the Charlotte Hornets offense on the Magic, so I expect Charlotte to score at least like 116 plus. I mean, they should be able to get over 120, no problem. And then it's going to be hard for the Magic to keep up with that amount of scoring, so that's why I'll be leaning towards that minus 10.5 for the Charlottes, because if Charlotte just have like 1 or 2 good quarters where they just score over like 34 points that quarter, I don't think the Magic can keep up with that. And then over 224, because Hornets, I believe they will have those 1 to 2 good quarters where like about 70 of their points are going to come from those 2 quarters. For Toronto at Detroit, I'll be leaning towards Toronto minus 7. I think there's the Toronto offense just spread off around like a few players like Van Vliet, Siakam, Anunoby. I mean, there's just options on Toronto where you have to defend each one of those players, because if you leave them open, they're going to knock down that shot, or they can make a few dribbles, hit the open man, and just get an easier shot or create a shot for themselves. And especially for Van Vliet as of recently, he's been playing very, very well, so you got to respect his gameplay. And then for Detroit, I think Toronto should handle them, even though they're playing at Detroit. There should be Toronto fans in Detroit, as the border's not too far for that. And then who's going to be doing the scoring for Detroit? I mean, I think Toronto's defense should slow down Detroit a lot. I mean, between Cunningham and Grant, it's going to be hard for Detroit to keep up with Toronto's offense. And that's why we're going with the under 219.5, as I think Detroit, they'll probably be scoring between that like 95 and 102 range, while Toronto will probably hit that 110 mark, but I don't expect Toronto to like explode on the scoreboard, like have over 120, hence I'll be going with that under 219.5. For the Celtics at the 76ers, I'll be going with Philadelphia minus 3.5. So Boston, they do show up for these big games, but they're also notorious just for throwing in the fourth quarter in these big games too. So I'll be leaning towards the 76ers to win this game and covering that 3.5 spread. And that's also due to the fact that Embiid has been playing very well of late. He's had a string of 30-point games. I believe it's up to 7 or 8 in a row. And the only person who can really slow him down on the Celtics would be Horford, and he's aging, and I guess Williams, but also I think he's a little too small for Embiid, because Embiid, he's a big man who has a lot of talent. And if the Sixers are going to win that, it's going to have to flow the ball through him. Offense is going to have to run through him, and then the defense is going to have to flow through him too. But Embiid is up to that challenge. I think the Celtics is one of those teams that he'd like to beat. So I do expect Philadelphia to cover that spread. Now I'll be going over 212.5, as I think this will still be overall a defensive game, but I believe that in the second half it will become more of a shootout, as I think first half be the teams more feeling themselves out, and then the second half should be a shootout, especially when it comes to the fourth quarter. And if it is a close game, it's going to be like one of those games where it's like back and forth shots at the end, and then free throws at the end always rack up the points at the end. So over 212. For Golden State at Chicago, I'll be leaning towards Chicago minus 3.5. Golden State played last night against Milwaukee. It was a blowout, but that means their players weren't expanded on their minutes as much, but they still played last night, and then they do have to travel to Chicago. So that does put a little more wear and tear on them, and I think Chicago wants to redeem themselves against that Brooklyn loss, as it was a large loss. It wasn't a close game, so I think Chicago wants to redeem themselves on that. Hence, I'll be going with Chicago minus 3.5. I'll be going under 222, as I think Chicago's defense should slow down the Warriors, and then in turn the Warriors, they can put up a defensive effort to slow down the Bulls. And overall, between like Curry and Thompson, they've been struggling as of late. I think Curry should have a better game tonight than he did last night, as I believe he only scored 12 points against Milwaukee. He should score more than 12. I mean, he is like the focal point of their offense, but I don't think he'll be scoring more than 25. And then Thompson is still getting situated in the offense. They're trying to still find the space and like the lineups that they need for the Warriors. So it's still like experimental time for them. And I think the Bulls should be able to take advantage of that. They may not have like the perfect answer for the Warriors for each lineup, but I think the Bulls just have a more unified lineup that they can go to that they're more comfortable with, and the players that are able to just perform on offense and be able to like make the correct switches on defense. So Bulls should win, and just the dysfunctional offense of the Warriors should keep this under 222. For the Hawks at the Heat, I'll be going with Miami minus 4. To be honest, I don't know why the spread is so close, as Miami, they've been playing well, and even with some of their players out, I think the players that they have right now with like Hero, Robinson, and Strauss, I think just the threat of all the 3-point shots, and then with Spoelstra, he's great at scheming. He has some good schemes on offense and defense. I think that should be enough to take down the Hawks, as Hawks have been struggling a lot this season. They just lost Reddish in that trade to the Knicks, so that's one less person that's on their team. So gonna rely on another role player to step up, or for like Trae Young or Clint Capella to step up and take over those minutes. I'm going over 217.5, as I think the Hawks defense, it shouldn't really slow down Miami, because Capella is more of a paint defender, and then Miami shoots a lot of threes. So I don't know how much Capella is going to affect that, which, in my thoughts, not a whole lot. So I think Miami should be able to get their points no problem. And the Hawks defense, it's not going to slow that down. And then especially if Robinson gets hot, like if he has one of those games where he's over 20, because when I check his stats, it's like he's either under like 9 points or he's over 20. There's nothing in between like 10 and 19. It's either or. So if he's above 20, this game is for sure over 217.5, or especially like over 112 for Miami. Then the Hawks, they can put up a lot of points. And if the Hawks put up a lot of points, I think Miami's going to put up a lot of points. So you could probably bump this over up if you think the Hawks are going to score a lot, up to like 224. But I think the Hawks are going to struggle personally, like get no more than like 108. And that's why I'll be going to over 217.5. For Cleveland at the Spurs, this is another one where I question why this spread is so close on FanDuel. So that's why I'm going with Cleveland minus 2.5. So I'd likely lean towards like Cleveland minus 6. I think Cleveland has been playing very well. They got that very big lineup with Markkanen, Mobley, and Allen, and that's just a lot of 7-footers on the floor at once. And I think that's kind of a hard lineup stop. And there's always going to be at least a 7-footer on the floor for the Cavs, and that's always a positive, I feel, in basketball. Just have a really tall guy, because that's just someone to defend the paint, and then also someone you can just pass it to in the paint, and then you know it's going to be a easy 2. And I don't think the Spurs will have an answer for that. Also, how Cleveland's been playing all season, it really doesn't matter like who's injured, as long as they got like players who've been playing consistently and their role players seem to step up. I think Cleveland should handle the Spurs. It will be going under 224, as I think Cleveland's defense will slow down the Spurs, and I believe they'll hold the Spurs probably to like 106 points, like plus or minus, I think 5 points, and then Cleveland should come out with the win. As once again, I said by 6, but I don't expect them to win by no more than like 12. I think it should be like close in the first half, but Cleveland should figure out the Spurs in the second half. For the Rockets at the Kings, so I'll be leaning towards the Kings -5. So I do expect this to be a shootout, but I think there will be glimpses of the Kings playing defense, as when I checked like the scores for the Lakers against the Kings, the final score was usually around like high 230s, low 240s, and I'm playing against a weaker team like the Rockets. I think the Kings defense can slow down the Rockets more than they did the Lakers, and then the Rockets defense shouldn't slow down the Kings offense as much, but overall it'll probably be around the same area, but I'll be leaning towards that under 238.5 though, as I think that both teams should be able to get their shots. It's just who's going to execute, who can play some better defense to just get those few stops and give them the win, which I think will be Sacramento at the end of the day. I think there's more experience, more with Barnes and Hield and Fox. I think there's just more experience on the Kings that they'll be able to handle whatever the Rockets throw at them. And there's still that kind of turmoil. I'm not really too confident on the Rockets right now, just with how they've been working internally. And once again, like the Kings, they're not a team I like to bet on either, as they're notoriously just in the bottom of the league. But this is one of those few games where I'd bet on the Kings. For the Mavericks at the Grizzlies, I'll be going with Memphis -2.5. So usually I don't bet on a team on their second night of a back-to-back, but the way Memphis has been playing and how they played last night, it's a very spread out attack, so they're not wearing down all their players. Well, like they're not wearing down like their 2 best players like a lot of teams, but it's more of an even attack. And I think there'll be enough energy left in the Grizzlies' tank to take down the Mavericks. Also, they're playing at home, which that also helps, so get some energy from the crowd. So yeah, I will be taking Memphis -2.5, as the Mavericks, they do play some good defense, so that's why I'm going with an under for this game. And that should slow down the Memphis offense somewhat, but I think Memphis should still be able to get that 112, like probably around 112 points, plus or minus 4. And then the defense from the Grizzlies should slow down the Mavericks a little bit, but I think the Mavericks offense is always kind of unpredictable game in, game out, as if they get hot from 3, they can load the scoreboard, but more often than not, they're not like shooting crazy percentage from 3, but they'll still shoot those 3s. But overall, I think Memphis should come out with this win, and then it should be a defensive game between these two, so under 219.5. Thank you for watching. Leave your comments on your thoughts for the games, and once again, thanks for watching.